Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured, why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, and every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description, and in every episode description, I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say, I'm watching so-and-so show. And then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it. And that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about episodes 1 and 2 of the new FX Limited series, Justified, City Primeval. Episode 1 is titled City Primeval, just like the subtitle of the show, and episode 2 is called The Oklahoma Wild Man. So, I was going to be covering this show regardless. I am a big fan of the original Justified show that ran on FX. I mean, if you're watching this, you probably also watched the original show as well, so you know what I'm talking about. We all collectively fuck with Justified and this whole world very heavily, so I was really excited for this one. There was always going to be that little bit of trepidation, like, do they have a story worth telling, or are they just trying to bleed some money and gain some eyeballs just off the strength of the Justified name and Timothy Olyphant's name, who's he's been popping up a lot more recently anyway. So I had that concern, but at the same time, I knew that this was based off of an Elmore Leonard novel. So having an already established story to kind of just modify and adapt, that made me have a little bit more faith in it, but I was still pretty concerned. But this time around, one of the reasons that I was concerned was because creator Graham Yost is gone. He's currently working on the incredible Apple TV show Silo, and he's replaced by Dave Andron and Michael Denner as co-creators. Dave Andron is no stranger to FX or this franchise. He also wrote several episodes on the original run of Justified, and he is also the creator and writer of many, if not all, episodes of Snowfall as well, which if you are a fan of this channel, you know I felt like they ended the run on that show really strong this year. So it's safe to say that this beloved franchise is in good hands. But I've never read any of the Elmore Leonard novels that this show is based on, but I've been hearing that this one is a good one. Just so far, after these first 2 episodes, I gotta say I'm whelmed. Like I'm not underwhelmed, I'm not overwhelmed, I'm just properly whelmed. Expectations were sky high, given my love of the show and what I had been hearing about it. And while I enjoyed a lot of what I saw, the vast majority, there's still some stuff here that, stuff that I feel would be a bit tighter if Graham Yost was still around. But before I get into like pros and cons and all that kind of shit, let's briefly talk about the premise, because again, I don't want to go into spoilers here. We'll save that for episode 3 next week. When I talk about that one, we'll get really down and dirty into it. But right now, just very broadly speaking, just to give you guys my thoughts on these first 2 episodes, and you can maybe decide whether or not you want to watch it or not. But it's been about 15 years, and Raylan seems to have taken his daughter to what she calls conversion therapy, but really just seems like a camp for maybe kids who act up because they talk about her having beat somebody up or punched somebody or something like that. Along the way, they are, we'll say, diverted, and they end up in my hometown of Detroit, Michigan, and Raylan gets caught up in a situation involving a thief/killer his connection to and ability to control some of the powerful people in Detroit, and a pretty high-profile murder. So that's basically the setup we get in these first 2 episodes, with some very spoilery details left out, of course. But first things first, Timothy Olyphant. He steps right back into the role of Raylan Givens quite easily, but I mean, if we want to be dicks about it, which I kind of do, he hasn't been away from the role that long, because I feel like Timothy Olyphant gets cast to play some version of Raylan Givens in pretty much everything that he's been doing nowadays. But I digress. I missed Raylan's approach to law enforcement in both how he talks to people and how he, let's say, responds to their behavior, responds to the behavior of people he might be looking into. There's a great moment near the end of the 2nd episode where I wrote in my notes that a character was going to regret doing what they had just done, and sure enough, I'm certain they ended up regretting what they had done. Because Raylan's gonna Raylan, man, and nothing you can do about it. But who can also when we're talking about Raylan, who can ease their jacket behind their gun and lean against the wall as cool as Raylan does? I'll tell you who. Not a single living and breathing motherfucker on this planet can lean against the wall and brandish their gun as coolly as Raylan Givens can. But man, part of what made Raylan so great was having a proper foe. And the yin to his yang, so to speak. And good old Boyd Crowder, played by Walton Goggins, he was that guy. I know we all are going to miss Boyd Crowder on this show, assuming we don't see him. I'm holding out hope that we will in some sort of flashback or one way or another. But instead, Boyd Crowder, played by Walton Goggins, is replaced with another Boyd Holbrook, who is playing the main villain for this season, a guy named Clement. I can't remember his last name, I think it was someone with an M, but his name's Clement. Now, here's the first kind of, I guess you could call it, issue that I had. Boyd Holbrook is playing this same character again. like giving it a buck. Like, I haven't seen the latest Indiana Jones, but doesn't Boyd Holbrook play essentially the same motherfucker in almost everything? Like, I get it's a role that he does well and a role that is always compelling to watch, but like, wasn't he the same character in Logan and Beckett? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't say he was like that in Narcos, but like the only thing that I really felt like he really showed his range in was Sandman. But like, I don't know. I question how much I'm gonna like him as the main villain on this show, because he just seems like he's playing the same character for the 87th fucking time. And if we want to keep it a buck, again, this is a very standard / cliche / by the books villain as of right now. Now, granted, there's time to make him real fucking interesting and different, and I may end up eating my own words, but for right now, I'm whelmed by this villain, man. It's a fucking cliche fucking character, not just in television or film, but even for Boyd Holbrook. It's like, you ain't gonna play somebody different? So, I don't know, you guys, but I also thought a lot of the humor, particularly in the first episode, really only in the first episode, felt a bit misplaced. It's almost like the humor to plot development ratio was way too, not in favor of humor, but with humor getting way too much of that ratio than it should. Like, Raylan comes to Detroit to testify in this trial, and it was really hard to keep a straight face during the trial, and not in a good way, because there was so much goofy shit happening. Like, you got this defendant shouting out that he wanted Chick-fil-A instead of wherever Raylan took him, and I don't know if that was meant to kind of be maybe like a sly reference to the Dylan what's-his-face that the cops took to Burger King after he did that mass shooting. I don't know if it was meant to be like that, but like, I wanted Chick-fil-A. It's like in the middle of a trial. Like, that felt weird. And then you got his daughter, Willa, who's now a teenager. She's like randomly laughing during this like serious moments in this trial and during Raylan's testimony. And then you have Keith David as the judge, and he's hamming it the fuck up. Like, it does, like, I would expect the judge to be a regular motherfucker, dog, but he's basically playing like the flesh version of the president character that he plays on Rick and Morty. Like, this motherfucker's turned way the fuck up. And I'm just like, he ends up, like, okay, this is how silly this scene was. He ends up dropping the charges against the defendant because he doesn't like the way Raylan talked to him. Like, he said something like earlier, there is an attempt on the Judge's life. And at the time of the attempt, and even now, well, no, now I know, but at the time of the attempt, we didn't know who it was or why they did it. And Raylan is getting badgered a little bit on the stand by the judge, and he says something to the effect of like, "Are you sure the bombing wasn't like? Are you?" No, he said, "Are you surprised someone tried to kill you, or are you surprised it hasn't happened more often?" And then the guy's just like, "Yeah, fuck it. The case against the defendant is dropped." I'm like, "What the fuck? Like, that's not how law works, is it?" Like, I can't be like, "Yo, I don't like the witness's face. Drop the charges." Like, what the fuck? Like, and they were like really hard on Raylan during this whole thing, and it was a silly scene, man. And you know, I bet the book probably doesn't come off silly like that at all in that scene. But I think, I'm doing a lot by saying this, but I feel like this is what you get when you lose Graham Yost. Like you, and not to say like you get like a significant drop in quality, but I feel like this kind of shit, like the weirdness of that court scene and something I'm going to talk about later, like that shit doesn't happen on at least as I remember Justified. Now, granted, maybe Justified the original run is just like this, and a lot of those things weren't as important to me, or I wasn't looking at it with a critical eye yet. So maybe that's the case, but this feels like if we had Graham Yost, I probably would have I feel like that scene would have been less goofy. And then there's another thing that I'm going to talk about too a little bit in a moment. But in addition to that sort of stuff, there's just flat out mistakes too. And again, this is kind of like if Graham Yost was still here, maybe this doesn't happen. So for example, there's a conversation between Raylan and his daughter Willa where he says the coffee in his hotel costs $34 for a pot. Then later, a character who was not in the room or privy to that conversation mentions like, "Oh, it's better than that $34 pot of coffee you got." Like, he wasn't there. Like, he's not, and granted, yeah, maybe that guy just knows how much a pot of coffee is at that hotel. But how does that look, right? Like, I shouldn't have to assume that a character maybe just picked something up through his everyday life in order to make what happened on the screen make sense. And like, that was a fuck up. And I'm not gonna sit here and be like, maybe Raylan told him how much coffee costs. Maybe he's been to that hotel. Like, I'm not gonna fucking headcanon my way into making a fuck up make sense. They fucked up. That's just what it is. So like, again, I feel like that kind of thing doesn't happen in the Graham Yost version of Justified. But again, I'm being uncharacteristically hard on it. But I also would have to say, am I? Because I didn't come into this like look at it, let me see what's gonna happen here, and I can judge it and be mad about it. Da, da, da. Like, I came in here like, this is gonna be great. So I came in with a very open to greatness mindset, and I'm sitting here like, yo, how the fuck does he know how much coffee costs? But I'm gonna move on. Another thing that I liked about these two episodes is the racial component that the show is touching on, as well as Raylan's kind of like fish out of water vibe. So what I mean is, in Harlan, Raylan was cool and he was a badass, but 15 years later in Detroit, he gets asked if he's Travis Tritt. Like, it's like, are Raylan's ways of law enforcement gonna end up ineffective or antiquated? Is he gonna get himself in trouble and held more accountable in a way that he wasn't when he was in Harlan and Art was around to bail him out? Like, that dynamic interests me for the rest of this season. And then also, we're in a place that's largely run by black people who probably have a lot of disdain for law enforcement. So now you're gonna bring in a motherfucker that's dressed like a cowboy who has a mouth on him like Raylan has, and it's probably not gonna go too good for him either at times. So like, that kind of shit, I'm all in on that. Miss me with I wanted Chick-fil-A at the trial and throwing out cases because Raylan got a smart mouth. Miss me with that shit. Give me this kind of stuff. Like, the stuff of like, how is Raylan gonna adapt in a new time, in a new place with, like I said, again, Detroit is like, a lot less so now, but it is still primarily a black city. I don't know, but I didn't see a lot of black people in Harlan. Like, they had that one season with my man, was in Limehouse or whatever. I think that was like season 4-ish, something like that. But not a lot of black folks in Harlan, man. Like, I'm just saying, it's gonna be different. The country versus the city, all that good stuff. But there are also some compelling mysteries laid out, particularly in the second episode, that are likely gonna pull you in. Like, there's a lawyer here who seems to be as shady as the criminal she defends. Like, she has an ex-husband played by a non-Jerry curled Amin Joseph, who seems equally as shady as her, and he lost his own law practice apparently because of it. Like, so what is his deal? What is her deal with him and the criminals that she works with? Like, how is his past gonna impact this show? Because you don't just bring in the guy to play Jerome so far, they just be like, have him do like a one-time appearance. Like, it's gonna be impactful. How? Why do all of these powerful black people in Detroit seem beholden to Clement's white ass? Like I feel like in this version of Detroit with a whole lot of black people in power, which is again very similar to this version of Detroit, except our mayor is white. How does Clement come in from out of town and have all these people under his thumb? And we get a little bit of flashback stuff that show us Clement with Vonnie Curtis Hall's character, which is some pretty interesting stuff as well. So I'm looking forward to delving into that too. So lots of interesting things that we can learn. Who is Clement? Like why are they? I don't want to say scared of him, but they are, at the very least, they don't want to fuck with him. Like, how much trouble is he going to cause Raylan? Like, but right now, after 2 episodes, again, it's still Boyd Holbrook playing Boyd Holbrook character. So it's like, he ain't Boyd Crowder, but we'll see. We'll see what he can do. But while I know I levy some criticisms, I mean, it was nice to see Raylan again. Like, what an all-time great character. And my issues, while I made kind of a big deal out of them, I really only mentioned like 2 things. Like, I very much feel like the show is kind of like finding its footing right now in these first 2 episodes, trying to set up the story that it wants to tell. And now that it's done that, which I believe it has after these 2 episodes, it can now focus on giving us that information, escalating the conflict, driving the plot forward, and maybe a little bit less goofy court scenes. So the plan going forward for me will be to drop these videos every Wednesday evening, just as I did today. Let me know how you feel about these first 2 episodes. Do you think I'm being too hard on the show? Like, am I being too hard on Boyd Holbrook? Am I being too hard on the $34 pot of coffee? Am I being too hard on that goofy-ass trial? Like, am I being a dick here, or did y'all think that shit was fucking perfect? Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you guys next week for episode 3, and until then, peace.